we know of some teams that have scheduled, permanently scheduled meetings with their executive, right? And there's a representative from the team whose job is to go, or a group of people whose job is to go and speak to that executive on a regular basis around agreed upon things that the team wants to bring, right? And that just happens in some systems, it's just built in a monthly basis, and that just happens, right? Some systems is much more, there might be a proxy of that person, or it might be more in a kind of quarterly basis or in a need basis, right? Different kinds of relationships.
Well, just something on that, just to be careful about, like, thinking of you all as in leadership, that, because this happened on the team that I was on, that there would be ways that it was so easy because of the way we fall into default white institutional values, that leadership would pick one person from the team to interact with and kind of like do this thing over here. And then there was way that person was then making decisions with leadership that wasn't actually accountable to the rest of the team. So part of the team's job is to be able to do the work as a collective. And so to just be very careful to not put people into that position where you're creating some kind of divide and conquer on the team. And then the team's job is really, the team has to work through all of the internalized racism and white institutional values too, that how does the team actually operate as a unit and not do each of their own Lone Ranger kind of stuff, right? So so that it is very intentional that it's a team and not just one individual in this position.
So it works both ways. That's just to say, these aren't simple systems and simple relationships. They are complex, but that they are mandated. And I think that that's the place that the team is in. So it matters that you know that, because the other place where I think teams encounter challenges working in systems is with people at your level, right? With supervisors that aren't always that is that disconnect between what we say and what we do, right? That when staff is needed to go do something, when team members need to go do something, the supervisors then say, well, you can't do that, or how much more time are you going to do on that, right? So that there's this way in which the hubris of the organization, our task orientation, that doesn't see that the team is actually working on behalf of the whole, then begins to create boundaries and challenges both around team members and around their own staff participation in these conversations that the team is guiding for. And that's part of the challenge. So that, for example, when you were talking about how do we name the patterns and dynamics, like it takes capacity building to do that. And if the team is offering a way of having people build their capacity, but then the supervisor says, yeah, you can't go to that. Nope, that does not fit in your job description. No, that's not. Then what it does is that it then actually doesn't build the capacity in the system. People can't name it when it happened. There's no way to interrupt it. And it creates a crisis. And here's the last danger for the team I'm going to offer. Then the team is expected to become the smoke jumpers that will fix every crisis. The team's job is not to do crisis management for the organization. It's not the team's job. And every time an organization pushes its team to manage every race-based crisis that emerges, it is slowly killing their team. That's not the job. They could be at the table where that is being addressed, but it is not their job to manage the crisis that racism creates. It is their job to have their long vision and to have their long strategy and to be a partner internal and thinking of the capacity building. That is their job. So I'll stop there. If there aren't any questions, I want to invite team members to come and share. Yes?
I was thinking before we did that, this comes up a lot. If you could speak to the role of the transformation team in disruption in the system.
Oh, yes. Yeah, what is the role of the team in disruption? So I think the role, so I want to talk about disruption as sort of the goal of the organization, right? That if an organization that's trying to get to 4 in the continuum, in order to get to 4, has to interrupt and has to disrupt its own participation, its own buying and commitment to the way that racism and white supremacy operate, right? So there is a collective commitment to that when you're saying you want to be in 4. The role of the team in that broad commitment is to offer strategic interventions, strategic disruptions to guide that. And I emphasize the word strategic because I think sometimes we have a kind of inside out, burn it all down kind of idea around interruption or disruption that works in the outside when you're doing outside pressure, that doesn't set itself well within the work of an institution and of internal change. That is, and that is not to say, when we hear this clearly, that is not to say that there won't be moments when multiple strategies have been tried and change hasn't happened, where you do have to do a big interruption. I'm not denying that. I am saying, however, that is not how a team does all of its work. The part of the work of a team is to think strategically, to develop relationships, to do the kind of capacity building internally in order to systematically begin to disrupt and have everybody participate in the disruption. Not just become the disruptor that everybody else is waiting for so that nobody else has to do the work. That's the danger of the team that is the interrupter all the time.
Then the team becomes the race police and everyone's like, oh God, here they come.
Yeah. And you don't want to become the race police because then nobody will participate in that.
But what I don't hear you say is make sure those strategic interruptions are comfortable to everybody.
Right. Oh, no.
Right.
It's not about comfort. The strategic interventions are meant to make us uncomfortable. But they're also meant, and sometimes agitating, but not always agitating. There's a like line, we always say that agitation is an act of relationship. I can agitate people with whom I have a relationship. But if all I do is agitate, my agitation will just become aggravation. And so we have to use agitation in strategic ways. And teams that expect the team to at times agitate you all. Mm-hmm. Expect the team to at times make you uncomfortable and to call you into ways of being and ways of acting that would make uncomfortable to you, that will challenge your sense of comfort. Yes, expect that. But it's also important, we're recording this for the team. It's also important that the team hears that it is not his job to walk around saying like, well, you engage in racism today, let me tell you about it. Right? And you engage in racism today, let me tell you about it. And you need to interrupt. Like, when a team is walking around a building doing that is just wasting lots of energy and not actually focusing on the bigger problems.
And then the people don't have the capacity themselves to see it and recognize it.
Yeah, when we're doing everybody's job, then it doesn't become...
I wanted to note that, the transformation team is taking a lot of time away from the job. So as you're supporting someone who's on the transformation team, provide that support of how can I help you on the things that you're missing or that.
Yeah.
Because this is a lot of thought and time and process that.
I know. Imagine if you just went through 2.5 days, imagine if you've gone to 10 days of this. Like,
and then do the work.
And then then go do your own job. Right? So it matters to hear that. How do you see the work of the team as a service to the organization?
Yes.
Not an add-on to the organization, a service to the ESD, an asset to the ESD, an internal tool, internal partners to the ESD. Whenever you stop seeing the team like this, then you need to revisit your relationship with each other. And the team is an asset, it's a tool, it's an internal transformation force to the ESD. How do you find ways to support it? To partner with it, to be in relationship with it. Anything else from the team that you all would want us to talk about, or anything else that, otherwise I'm going to turn it over to you all to say a little bit about your work.